Welcome to the Dr. Mudgil podcast. This is episode 207. We are on the other side of Halloween. We are in November. For those of you, every state doesn't have daylight savings time, but here in New York we do. So daylight savings time was last weekend, and oddly, you get an extra hour of sleep in the fall. Fall back, spring forward. But I don't know. I guess the older I'm getting, it screws me up because the other night it was like 8:30 at night, and I was like deathly tired. We had a busy weekend, which I'm going to get into in a minute, but I realized that my body felt like it was 9:30, and 9:30 is quitting time for the doc these days. I'm usually getting ready to go down for the night. But anyways, daylight savings time. We are in the deep throes of fall here. It's the month of Thanksgiving, so lots going on. A new month, the final push of 2025. So make sure you're attacking those goals or preparing to set new goals for 2026 because it is literally just around the corner. All right, so let me get into it a little bit. So, let me just fill you in a little bit more what's going on in my world. It's my wife's, the boss's birthday this week. It's actually tomorrow. So we have some fun stuff planned for that. And this upcoming weekend, we're actually going to go visit my daughter. It's parents' weekend, so we're taking the boys down. The Mudgil crew is heading down. We have a really fun weekend planned. We're going to check out a basketball game on Friday night. We're going to check out a football game on Saturday. Come on, who's kicking ass in football? We're the 12th ranked team in the country. Looks like we're going to make the college playoffs. So it's very, very exciting. I'm like I said, as I mentioned in the past, I'm living vicariously through my daughter. My dream was always, my regret was always not going to like a big D1 football school. My big regret is not having gone to Michigan. So I'm getting to live it through my daughter. UVA is delivering, and it's been very, very exciting, very fun. Very excited to see my daughter and to hang out with her this weekend. This past weekend, which is going to be kind of what I get into a bit with this podcast, we had a busy weekend. My little guy had a basketball tournament up in the Bronx and in Westchester. They won the tournament, the champs. They won the chip, so that was very, very exciting. But on Sunday morning, my wife and I went to a funeral, and which was, obviously sad for obvious reasons. It was one of my mother-in-law's close friends who's, they grew up, my wife grew up with their kids, and they all actually went to high school together. So it was a sad weekend. It was at the same place where my father-in-law's funeral was. There's like a place out here in Long Island. It's pretty far out on the island where a lot of the Indian funerals are, because they have a crematory on site, which is obviously our tradition. And, most of the Indian families use that particular spot for funerals. So we went out on Sunday morning, and it was the same place where my father-in-law's funeral was, as I mentioned. So, I think there was like a lot of that weight on my wife, and, these things are always hard no matter what. But I think she was reliving some of that, obviously, which was, traumatic for the family. When we were at the funeral, it's always like really sad when the kids who my wife knew, she went to high school with them, are speaking about their parents. And obviously you think about your own parents and think about, the circumstances in your life. And then when the grandkids speak, it's even more like gut wrenching because you obviously you're feeling all of that through the perspective of your own kids, of your own family. And, these things are always tough. But it was important for us to go because I remember, when my father-in-law passed away, just being around people that you knew, and, people kind of came out of the woodwork, like people that we hadn't seen in years. And it was very, very comforting, particularly for my wife, it was very comforting to have familiar faces and, just feel the love of the room, to feel that folks are supporting you. And, the folks that weren't there, you kind of in the back of your head, not that you're, keeping score, but you kind of, you really do remember the folks that showed up for you, and you're surprised by some of the folks that actually made the effort to show up for you. And you're also kind of like disappointed, I guess, by some of the folks who didn't make the effort to come out. And of course, listen, life happens and the circumstances that happen in life where obviously you can't make it to every event like this, but again, not that you're keeping score, but you really remember the folks that came out to represent. So it's very important for us to represent, which is like, that's a podcast in and of itself. It's something that will get into it another time. But, interestingly, when we showed up to the funeral, and it was an Indian family, and, like basically the folks that were attending this funeral were, I think it's safe to say, like, it's probably like 97% Indian folks. But there was a couple that was there who are actually patients of mine who are non-Indian. They're patients of mine in my New York City office, and they made the trip all the way out. I mean, it's probably like a 50 or mile drive for them to come out to where the funeral was. And I actually never, when I saw them, I was just like, obviously I greeted them, I gave them a hug, and so very, very surprised to see them there. But we didn't have a chance to like chat and catch up and see like what the connection was between all of us. But it was really like a reminder to me that, God, the world is such a small place. Like, I've known this couple for probably like 15 years. I've been patients in my New York City office for that long. I see their kids. And then, I've literally known them for a really, really, really long time. I see the wife's mom is my patient. It's one of these situations where I kind of see a bunch of the family. So I'm kind of connected with these folks, professionally. They're my patients. But I don't know. I just feel like I have a bond with my patients, especially when you're seeing their entire family. I'm very curious about my patients. I love to hear about their family, like what they do, where they go on vacation, what's going on in their lives. That's like the best part of being a doctor, like having these connections with so many people. And you learn so much from your patients, and it's just it's the best part of being a doctor, that relationship you have with your patients, and not just the professional stuff, but getting to know, who they are, like, what they do in this world. And it's fun. So I know these folks, and to see them at this funeral it was really just a reminder that, everyone says there's 6 degrees of separation between folks, but the more that you're on this planet, the more that you realize that, there's probably 1 or 2 degrees of separation between so many of us. And, seeing these folks there was a reminder of that, and sort of unrelated. But I remember my kids were really, really little. Kids can get a little bit rowdy when you're out and about. And if we were like in a restaurant, they were kind of going crazy, doing things that kids naturally do. I would always tell my kids, like, hey guys, you got to behave. Like sometimes, one of Dad's patients could be here, someone we know could be here. We got let's be respectful of everyone that's around us, be on our best behavior. And I remember my kids would say, Dad, you're always saying that. You're always saying like we're going to see your patients, or we're going to see people that you know. But now that they're older, like this literally happens all the time. When we're at a restaurant, folks will come up to us. We're in Whole Foods. We'll see folks that we know. We're on vacation. Like literally, we were in the Caribbean somewhere, and there was someone that knew us. It happens all over the place. And my kids are like, wow, Dad, a lot of people really do know you, or you know a lot of people. And it's this 1 or 2 degrees of separation that we have. And it was a reminder to me, not that I would operate in any other way, but wherever you go, there you are. How you do anything is how you do everything. How you treat anyone is how you treat everyone. And it was beautiful to see folks like in a very, very sad moment, but it was amazing to me that, we're all so connected in, a very, like there's not a lot of degrees of separation between us, between all of us. And, kindness always is the way to be. Generosity is the way to be. Smile when you can. Make people feel that they're important in your world, because they are, because that person that you're talking to could be like the cousin of someone who you're very, very close with, or someone who's important to you, or, we're all connected, and acting compassionately, kindly, all of those things really, really make a huge difference, because our worlds are very, very, very small places. And the more kindness and warmth and love that you can create in your immediate world, the more fulfilling and wonderful your life will be. It's, I say this all the time. Any great karma you put out into the world comes back to you tenfold. And as sad as this funeral was, it was a reminder too that there is a lot of positivity and beauty in this world. You're just hearing what folks were saying about this wonderful woman who passed away. She worked in a library. She was very, very dedicated to the work that she did. And some of the librarians, her coworkers, came and said all of these beautiful things about her. And there was a lot of, as sad as the day was, as sad as those few hours were, there was a lot of positive to come out of that. Just the impact of this woman on her family, on her friends, on the world around her, and just the energy that we have, the energy that we're bringing to this world, it doesn't disappear when we're gone. Her legacy is going to carry forward, and all that energy, that positive energy, all the love that she put into this world, and that's what we're all doing. And we're all, what we all should be doing is emoting positive energy into this world, because whatever we put out there comes back to us. And just seeing my patients here at this funeral was such a reminder of that. When I saw them, it was just kind of natural for me to just hug them. We were all here together, and we were all there together to support these folks that we didn't even know that we all knew, which is, it was really a beautiful thing and a beautiful reminder of how amazing our journey on this planet is. So with that, I hope I wasn't rambling too much. I hope you all have a wonderful, restful weekend and are just ready to crush the week ahead. Let's get it.